My name is Sandra, and your name is?
Kaylee.
Kaylee. Hi, Kaylee. I hope you remember, our session is going to be taped today just because I'm a therapist in training under the supervision of Susan Hastings. And this is just so that they can give me feedback on me. Okay. Do you mind if we get the business out of the way before we begin?
That's fine.
That's fine. So, as you know, or may not know, everything that you say is confidential within these four walls. However, there is a little bit of limitations to that. So if for some reason you mention anything about child abuse, I am a mandated reporter. If you mention anything about elder abuse, that would be anybody over the age of 65. I'm a mandated reporter in that as well. And if I should get subpoenaed by a court or by a judge, those are the limitations. But other than that, whatever you say is kept within these confines. Let me see if there's a few more things. I need to look at my notes. Please excuse me. And so we also have billing because we're under a grant. Your weekly fees would be, or session fees would be $10. And if you need to contact me for any reason, I will be at the end of the session giving you an email address that you can contact me with, or you can text me, or you can call the number that you made the appointment with, and they can get a hold of me also.
Okay.
And so, with the business out of hand, what brought you in today?
Yeah, I guess I've just been feeling, I guess kind of to put it like worthless in my relationship with my son. So a little context, I'm a single mom, and my son, he's a teenager, and he's just been having a really hard time in school, and I don't know how to help him. So everything I do, nothing works. I don't really know.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that you feel a little overwhelmed being a mom.
Yeah.
Would you describe it that way?
Or overwhelmed, also, I guess, just I'm constantly worrying about him, constantly trying to make sure that he's okay and do everything I can do.
Is there anything that's happening in his life right now that makes you think he's not okay?
Yeah, I think it's just a built-up of everything that's going on at school. So he got a report card and he's failing multiple classes. And I try to get on him about the grades, like what's going on. I try to sit down with him, but he gets so angry and agitated with me. And then he's falling asleep in class. His teachers are calling me, asking me like, what's going on? I don't know what to tell them. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And he just shuts me out.
Right. May I ask, is his dad in the picture?
No, Dad's not in the picture. Dad was had a history just kind of like substance abuse and wasn't necessarily like a present person. So I did all the raising, on my own. It's just that Dad kind of comes in when he's, stable. So he's not a very consistent like parent.
Okay. So, but he is in his life in and out.
In and out, yeah.
That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And how old did you say your son is?
He's 16.
He's 16?
Mm-hmm.
Is he driving?
No, he doesn't have a lot of independence. He's very he doesn't like to do anything for himself, locks himself in his room, plays video games all day long, just to himself. And he doesn't have very many friends, so.
But at this point, you are at least able to get him to the school building.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a struggle, but he gets to school and
He gets to school.
Yeah.
And may I ask, what do you do for a living?
yeah, I'm a nurse, so I work full time. I just all day long I'm busy, and then luckily I'm able to come home, later in the day and spend time with him. But that's what I do for my job. Just very busy.
Okay. And so do you work weekends also? Or, because I know nurses can
Yeah.
sometimes work weekends.
No, luckily I have just a Monday through Friday job.
Oh, that's
at my clinic.
lovely.
Yeah.
That's nice. And what do you do for yourself? What do you do for self-care?
Honestly, whenever I have a spare moment, I just like to relax on the couch, unwind. A lot of my attention goes to raising my son and trying to give him everything I can, at least with the time I have, and I guess I really just focus all my attention on him because it's just been, chaotic, time.
Right. I don't want to assume anything, but from what I'm hearing, he's an only child?
Yes, he's an only child.
Yes. Okay. And do you have any support help?
I have my sisters. They live not too far off from us, 30 minutes drive, but we're not nearby all the time. They're constantly, around. So for the most part, it's just myself, my son, and then my mom as well, but she's older.
Okay.
So she's not able to be as, hands-on.
Hands-on. Right. But she's in good health?
She's in good health, yes.
So she's not dependent on you as well?
No, she's not.
Okay. And what other things do you like to do besides take care of your son?
I like to take care of our dog. We have a little Chihuahua, so I like to go on walks with our dog. Go to the
you do
park.
walk. That's
Yeah, I
good.
walk. I try to. It's not always consistent, but I try to at least maybe 2 to 3 times a week go on like a nice walk.
Okay. And what made you consider therapy? I'm just kind of curious, just to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I've just been feeling, a bit down, and I've been kind of having these, it feels like a heart attack. When the other day, my son came home, he just shut down on me and started just kind of yelling at me, saying how he doesn't like it here. Apparently he's getting bullied at school, and he just kind of is telling me how he wishes that these bullies can get a taste of their own medicine, and that he's tired of living here. He wants to go with his dad, and so I was having a really hard time with that, and it was actually my sister that said maybe I should go to therapy, talk about it. So I'm here trying to see what I can do.
All right. So what I hear you saying is you have 2 sisters?
I have 2 sisters, yes.
Yes, and a mom, and those are kind of your support systems.
Yes.
And that you are feeling overwhelmed, and it sounds like you're almost having a panic attack. Would you describe it that way, or am I reading too much into what you're saying when your chest hurts?
Yeah, my chest hurts. It feels like my heart's racing, but I've never heard of what a panic attack is, and I just don't know, I've never really experienced that before, so I don't really know what that could look like.
Okay. Yeah. So you've never experienced that? I know nurses can be very stressful, and you've never experienced those kind of feelings at work?
No, at work, I'm surprisingly really good at running around and trying to manage everything. It doesn't stress me out.
Your work does not stress you out, so that is not a stressor for you.
No, not at the moment. I guess when I was doing the school for it, it was a little bit stressful.
Of course.
But once I got into the role, I had really good management and team, so I never felt like I was overworking myself where it was so bad. Normal, work stress, but nothing too bad.
Right. I'm just kind of listening to you and hearing you. And so what besides having these anxious feelings, do you ever get depressed or sad?
I get sad. Yeah, I get sad. I'm worried all the time. Like, I never know what's gonna happen, with my son.
Does that ever cause you to think about harming yourself?
No, I'm not, that type of person. I'm very much constantly trying to stay strong, and I know that my son needs me, and that would never be something I'd want to, have happen.
Right. So what do you think gives you the strength to be strong? Because you do sound strong.
Yeah, I would say, I had a tough life as well, and my son, I wanted to just kind of prevent him from kind of experiencing and going down the wrong path, especially, with his father.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to prevent him from kind of following in those footsteps.
Right.
So I just want to provide him with everything, that we as parents didn't necessarily, like our mistakes,
Right. So what does that look like, providing him with everything? What would that look like in your home?
Yeah, where he's happy and he's doing well in school, where he can have his friends over, because he doesn't really share with me if he has friends, or when I do kind of think that he's not, he doesn't have friends. And I suspect that he is, doing like marijuana, and he's lying to me about it. And so I would really like him to not, do that, and just be healthy and happy, I think like a normal kid that's just engaging in school, that, sleeps at night because all he does is want to play video games. So I think that's what that would look like.
So do you think that causes, do you see any anxiety in him? Do you see him being anxious, or does it just come across as not sleeping at night, and so maybe?
I think, yeah, he might be a little anxious, angry, at times about things that are going on. I thought this was because he's like a teenage boy, and that happens around that age,
Right.
that there's changes there, and I might not be completely sure about it, and that's why sometimes I feel like, with his dad not fully in the picture, it falls on me to also be like the father figure, and I don't know what that really looks like.
Right. What was your relationship with your dad? You haven't really mentioned him.
Yeah, my dad, he was a tough man. He was a military man, so there was always structure, very strict man, but he was a compassionate person. He learned kind of just how to show up in his way.
Right.
Granted, he was tough, but I knew that he cared just by him showing up, and having, I guess, it's just a good relationship overall with my family, my sisters. There was always laughter in the house.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
What would cause you guys to laugh?
Just at dinner, we'd have dinner together every night, and it was just, we'd always laugh and make fun of my dad. Like, he is a silly man. He was tough, but once that we got him out of that like military shell, and he was really adjusted to living back here, he interacted with us. He played with us. He made jokes. He was a big jokester.
So what I'm kind of hearing, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, so I just want to repeat, is that when you were younger, your dad was in the military. So was he in and out of your life, or was he a stable, like the Navy, they travel a lot, and then the Army are more stable, they're more able to be present in their families' lives. So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, he was stationed in different states and countries. He was all over the place, right? But we lived primarily, with my mom. She, did everything for us while he was away constantly, and we'd, visit him when we had the chance to. So he was doing that for quite some time, up until right until I was around like middle school, high school age. He, left. He came back home, started working, a regular job, and so that's what that kind of looked like. And ever since then,
And so I take it your mom and dad are still married?
Yes, my mom and dad are still married. Dad is not all there.
Okay.
There was a lot of PTSD with the military and everything, so he lives in like an assisted living type of home.
Okay.
So we visit him, and he's just
So
not
that
fully.
adds a little bit of more stress or a different layer.
At first it was a bit stressful, and I guess really sad for us because that was our dad. He was like a rock.
Right.
He was the most stable man you'd ever met.
Right.
But he slowly just started forgetting things, not being fully aware. He had a lot of PTSD, and so he had always told us that he wanted us to remember him as the strong man, right? That nothing would ever change that. And so his memories, not all quite there. He kind of forgets us, quite often. But it can be hard, especially for my mom, seeing her but sad by herself a little bit more. But I think I try to really remember him for the figure that, he was consistently. And I just try to show up and still try to have a relationship with him as I can.
Right. And so how often do you get to visit him?
I try once a week.
Okay.
I try to take my son. Sometimes he wants to come, and other times, he's like, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how that looks.
Okay. And so as I hear you and I'm listening to you, that is a lot on your plate. It seems like in every aspect of your life, people are taking from you. Like your work requires you to give a lot. Being a nurse requires you to be there, attentive to your patient's needs. And then your son going through his teenage years, and then with your dad and your mom needing your support.
Yeah, it's a lot. With my siblings, with my sisters, we try to spread out the load a little bit, but they have their own lives too. And, as the oldest, I, tend to want to take care of our parents a little bit more, because I know they have, a lot of kids. The middle sister, she has 4 kids, and the youngest one, she has 3, and so I just have the one. So I feel like
Are any of the cousins of the same age as your son, or
they're kind of spaced out. A lot of them are younger, elementary, middle school age type of kids, and they're all busy in their lives. And I try to bring my son around with the family. And when they were younger, they were all so close.
Right.
But as he got older, it feels like he just really distanced himself from everybody and started saying that he doesn't like them or that they're annoying.
Do you know if there was any one event that could have caused this change in your son, or?
I don't know if it was any specific of it. When he got to high school, he started just kind of feeling really, like I started noticing him being really different. He wasn't interested in playing sports anymore. He, was always, sleeping, during the day or sleeping in class, and he wanted to be up all night playing video games. And so when he got to high school, everything changed. It kind of felt like he wasn't my little boy anymore.
Right. So what I hear you saying is that he's angry, his grades are dropping, he doesn't appear to have friends or the friends that he used to have, and he's not sleeping.
Yeah.
And have you ever thought about putting him in therapy?
I haven't really thought about it, just because if he will barely talk to me, I feel like with the therapist, he was not going to tell them anything. and I don't want to, send him to therapy and pay all this money, and he's just gonna sit there like silent. So I don't think maybe he's ready for that yet, or
Right.
when I do see a point, I think I would be open to it. I just think right now he's very closed off,
Right. So,
and he just kind of storms away whenever he doesn't feel like talking about things, and will go to his room. So
right. So what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of anxiety on your part, a lot of feeling overwhelmed, and maybe you could benefit with figuring out how to do a little bit of self-care. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
maybe I feel like I also feel like it would be selfish of me to want to take care of myself instead of doing everything I can for my son. Anytime I'm online researching like all these parent blogs. I'm trying to keep up with what's going on or seeing what I can do for him, or I'm in parent conference meetings, so I feel like anytime I just need to give it to him. Like, I owe him this much, as a parent, without his dad. His dad doesn't really care. I try to get his dad involved. His dad will sometimes come, but just brush it off and say that he's a boy, like boys are gonna be boys, and so that's why I feel like I owe it to him to be everything.
Right.
And
That's a heavy weight on you.
yeah, I guess, I don't know, I feel like I've always just kind of done everything.
So you've kind of always been the champion of the family, the one who's kind of rallied the teens.
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah,
being the oldest. I
yeah,
would
the
imagine.
oldest, it came with a lot of needing to help my mom or be like a parent when our dad was away. So I guess, yeah, you could say I did a lot of like raising my sisters, and when I could get a job, I was 16, working a job at like the local convenience store. So I was always doing my best for everybody, and so that was kind of what my job was in the
Right.
family. Yeah.
Right. So do you feel like you were ever allowed to be a kid yourself?
When I was younger, yeah, like with my sisters, we'd play. We'd have fun. We'd, go out riding our bikes all day long. And, as I got older and as, our dad started being away, my mom, she'd always we'd all have chores and things, so I'd always, be the one kind of doing a little bit more, or kind of always helping her with dinner. So it was always like, for the longest I can remember, it was always that we had this routine, because our dad was also so strict. There was like order, we all had chores, we all had like expectations of like what we needed to do, how to be, right? So it was always just kind of like following the rules, for all I know. And so that's just kind of how it was.
And do you feel like you brought that kind of order to your home?
I tried to find a balance, because I knew that my dad could be really strict at times. And so I was like, I don't want to, be like my dad and my mom, right? Like, I don't want to be overly strict. Because when I was a teenager, I didn't really like that. I couldn't go anywhere.
Right, of course.
And so I really wanted my son to feel like he can have freedom, but he was still, organized and independent, right? And doing these things and that would set him up a good way. So I feel like I tried to do like a balance.
Right.
So he didn't feel like my mom is so strict.
Right. So, what did a balance look like for your home?
Yeah, it was, at least when his, dad was living, we were all living together, right? It was kind of him in and out, but we always tried to make it work with our relationship. And so when he was younger, we kind of had a routine, right? Like, I worked most of the day, and so one of us would do like drop off and pick up at the school, right? And so our son would be, going to school, he'd go to the after school program, right? And then I, try to pick him up most days and come home. We, make dinner together. And then after that, we'd either go like to the park, or if it was like Wednesdays, we always had him in sports. So we'd go to baseball practice. So there was always like a routine, like every day of the week we had like something going on, or we were at home with like, just watching a movie together. But we always kind of, did things, at a certain time, like homework, we did homework around like, 7 p.m., right? And have dinner and all these different things. So we always try to have like a tight schedule. Sometimes it wouldn't work, and
Of course.
we'd make it work, with whatever we had. But we always try to have like a schedule of what our week would look like.
Okay. And so, at what point did Dad kind of not be part of the picture?
Yeah, Dad had always kind of, not always, but he kind of has always struggled with, alcohol, drug abuse. He, right when our son was in middle school, it kind of started affecting us because he would leave for periods of time and we wouldn't know where he is. He would spend a lot of, our money that we made together. He'd empty our bank accounts to go, fulfill his, drug, alcohol abuse. And so it was just to the point where I told him either, like, you get help or you can't be here. And I had tried my best to get him in, like, a support group and all these things. I presented it with him, and he said no. He didn't want the help. He was happy the way he was. And so, I wanted to protect our son, and I felt like I couldn't allow him to see that or think that it was okay. And so I told him, well, if you're not, if you're not wanting to get clean, if you don't want to be a good father, a good husband, you can leave. And he left right a year before our son went to high school, left and lived on his own, went back to living with his parents, his mom, and then lives in like the back house of like his mom's house. They have this little setup they have. So that's just kind of what that timeline looked like. And so ever since then, it's just been, me and my boy.
Right. It's just been you two, and just kind of making it work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
doing the best. Luckily, with my work, they have been super understanding with me, like in my scheduling, right? And trying to give me like the weekends off, right? So that way I can spend time, with my son. Or there's been a couple days where I needed to like leave early because I need to go meet, pick him up from school, right, at a conference, right, because he got in trouble. So they haven't given me a hard time at work at all about it, because they're super great. So luckily that was in place for me just to focus on surviving and still being able to have extra money to give him whatever he needed.
So I haven't heard you mention any friends. Do you have friends at work?
Yeah, I don't know if you call them like friends. I mean, we're really good coworkers, and we get through it all together. We were a team, right? And so we manage each other's load. We help out. We have lunch together.
You do have lunch together.
Yeah, we talk about our lives, their kids, my son, right? We're kind of just talking about everything. And there's maybe been like one time that we were supposed to go out and go get coffee together on a weekend, but my son just was not having a good day. And so I was like, okay, I think, my son needs me. I just kind of let her know. I was like, I can't, sorry about that. I canceled on her. But she understood. She knows what it's like to have boys.
Right.
So she was okay with it. But I haven't planned anything with, her since And that was like a month ago, 2 months ago almost.
So, okay. So, but you do have a good working relationship, and she is somebody that, would you consider her a confidant or just chit chat?
I mean, I don't really know if she'd be like a confidant or not, just because we haven't really hung out outside of work, right? Like, I don't know. But since we're always working, you know, I'm always talking to her, we help each other, you know, with our loads, so that way, if one of us is having a bad day, right? Like, I'll pick up her load and she'll pick up mine. And so that way we're, I guess, feeling okay and supported. That's just kind of the culture there at work. Everybody's very positive, which is kind of rare because I worked in really bad places where it's like overworking and everybody for themselves.
Right.
But I finally found a good team to be a part of, and I know I can talk to her about anything, and she wouldn't judge me about it because, you know, she's also had her fair share of stuff. And
right. And excuse me, I just have one clarifying question. Did you say you worked at a hospital or do you work in a doctor's office?
It's like a clinic, doctor's office setting.
Okay.
Yeah. I started off in hospital, that's all I did. But it's like a hospital, like clinic, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. Perfectly. Okay. Have you, when did your son's grades start slipping?
In his first year, so he's in his like second year of high school, he's a sophomore. So towards the end of his like freshman year, it just kind of started plummeting, and he started off sophomore year just not doing anything. At the beginning of his freshman year, he really tried, like I could see that he was trying to stay afloat, that he would stay after class, or he'd try to talk to the teachers, like, you know, like I know my boy always would. He'd, you know, ask for help. And then out of just kind of this shift, right, he stopped kind of caring. He stopped asking for help. And so it just kind of, you know, he only really tries if it's like he knows that I'll be upset, right? And he wants me to get off of his back. That's the only time I see him, you know, pick up the pencil, even for a little bit.
So he never struggled in elementary school, he always was able to keep up? Or do you think he was able to keep up because you gave him support?
Yeah, like he is always a smart kid. Like, granted, he wasn't like an honor student or AP, but in his regular classes, he, you know, had around like B's. He had maybe like an A or two, right? I, you know, was fine with that as long as he, you know, was happy and he tried. You know, I was proud of him, and he kept that up. And it's always been like something I've told him that I'm proud of him, right? And then once the grades started slipping, you know, talk to him like, what's going on? What's wrong? You know, because it's one thing to like, you know, try and not get good grades, and then it's another thing to not try whatsoever and be failing.
Right.
And that's what I told him. I was like, you could try, and if you were failing and trying, we'd figure it out.
Right.
But he just can't give me a reason as to why he's failing.
Right. Did his friends go to, the friends he had in junior high, did they follow him to high school? Or did you guys move or anything?
No, they stayed. He went to like he's done the local elementary, middle school, high school. He's done all of that. And once he, like in freshman year, he was friends with them. But once he came back for his sophomore year, I stopped seeing them around. They stopped coming over. And I would ask him, like, you know, what happened to, like, your friend Jeremy and Alan, right? Like, where are they? You know, they're your best friends. You played baseball together. He's like, oh, we're not friends anymore. I'm like, well, what happened? Did you guys get in a fight? He's like, no, they're just, you know, they're not cool. Like, they're lame and they don't, you know, they're not fun.
somebody else who was more fun?
He started trying to hang out with kind of like the wrong crowd, the kids that, you know, weren't trying in school, that, you know, looked like they were doing drugs, and that, you know, they weren't really going anywhere. And so I very much told him that that wasn't okay.
Right.
That, you know, you have really good friends. You know, you don't need to give into like peer pressure. You don't have to try to be somebody you're not. And then he kept telling me, this is exactly who I am. And so, you know, I don't know what happened even with those people. Like, I don't hear about them. Maybe he's just not telling me. You know, so.
But you've never found drug paraphernalia in your home?
Oh, I have.
Oh, you have?
In his like backpack, right? Like he'll, you know, I'll make him do stuff around the house. And when I'm cleaning his room, like I find this weird, like, you know, bag stuff thing that I'm like, you know, and so I know like that he's, you know,
that he's doing
drugs, and you know, I took it, and you know, I wanted to see kind of like what he would say, and what his reaction would be. And he was like, oh, it's not mine, I'm holding it. Like, you know, this kid at school, you know, said he'd get in trouble. I didn't believe him 1 minute.
You didn't believe him?
Oh, like,
No.
why? Like, no. I wasn't born yesterday, like, and so I'm like, well, who are you holding it for? Is it like a friend? He's like, no, like, I don't have any friends. And he just kind of got so angry at me. He blew up at me. He, you know, that's when he blew up at me and said, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to go live with my dad. And so, you know, ever since then, it's just, he's ignoring me.
So that's when that was the catalyst kind of to the
Yeah.
anger towards you.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you, since that incident, found any more paraphernalia in your home?
No, I've been searching him, you know, like at least growing up, my dad was very strict about that. That was like he had a zero tolerance policy for that, for doing drugs and for anything like that. And if it were, he'd be the type of man to like search us. And, you know, I told him, I was like every day you come home, like, and you leave and you come home, I'm checking your backpack. And, you know, consistently, you know, he lost privileges to his video games. So it's just kind of, it feels like a military family, like what I grew up with, but even worse, where nobody's happy.
Right.
At least, you know, with the strictness and structure, there was happiness.
Right.
And now, like, we're both, like, I don't want to have to be like this, and I know he doesn't want to do this either.
Right.
So we're both just kind of, like, angry. And I'm just, that's why I'm constantly feeling like I'm about to have a heart attack, because I never know what's going to happen next. I never know, like, what he's going to do, or, like, I don't want him to mess up his life, and I definitely don't want him to follow in the footsteps of his dad.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. So it sounds like we're going to have some work to do, but are you up for that? Are you up to coming back and seeing where we can take this?
I am. I want to work on my relationship with my son, and I also want to help him. You know, if he's open to help and coming here too, he can sit right next to me and we can do it together. But I'm just really tired of that.
And it sounds like you have good reason to be tired. So it sounds like you really have a lot on your plate between your family of origin, with your dad, your son, and an ex. Is he your husband? I never got that clarified.
We are separated, but we're, you know, in the process of, you know, divorce.
So you're in the process of divorcing. Just kind of curious, does he work?
Last time I checked, he did work, but he's
Okay.
always been he can't keep a job, so I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't have a job.
Okay. And so, is it going to be an amicable divorce, or do you feel like he's going to try to fight you on anything?
No, I feel like we're both at the point of that there's no, relationship,
Mm-hmm.
that he thinks I won't get off his back of trying to reach out to his son and thinks I'm nagging him. So I don't think, there's anything there left.
Okay. So, would you be interested in scheduling another appointment?
I would be, yeah, if we're able to, yes.
Yes, I think that we can make that happen. I'm going to have you go ahead and schedule it with the receptionist outside.
Okay.
If it's convenient for you, maybe we can set up a couple of them.
Okay.
That way, we can have them work with your schedule. It's easier to work with your schedule if we set up.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then, do you have any questions for me?
Not that I can think of. I think my biggest question will just be, what's next?
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's everything. Thank you for, listening. I felt like I needed to just kind of get that out.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. It's so important to share. And so we do have a few, with it being our first meeting, we do have a couple of paperworks to fill out. So I'm going to go ahead and give that to you. One is, here's my card, and it has the email address on the back. They're going to email you some forms to fill out, and then if you could email them to this.
Okay, I'll go ahead and
And
do that.
then there is a quick, just a little rating scale, just if you wouldn't mind doing that real quick for me.
Okay.
Okay. And so between now and next time we meet, I would love for you to report back just one small thing you did for yourself.
Okay. I'll go ahead.
Whether it be you bought yourself something from Target, or if you went and had coffee with your sister, just something small, nothing big, and just report back to me what it felt like to be able to do that.
Okay. I'll make note of
Or
it.
if something happened and you couldn't really follow through, let's make a note of that too. Just to see where we are, see if we can build up some self-care habits.
Sounds good. I'll remember that.
Okay, so well, I look forward to seeing you next week, and I appreciate all of your time and your stories.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much.